And good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here with us today, and welcome to ASRM 2022. So today's topic, as she described, is about beyond hardware. We're going to try to understand how we have done the implementation of Embryoscope or a time-lapse system in your laboratory. So our current discussion is going to be on history and a little background, improvement, communication improvement, as well as comment on risk deduction. Excuse me. For next time, which will not be included in this presentation, is the impact of the time-lapse system on embryo quality, embryo selection, as well as the comparison of different platforms. Just giving a little background here, how this started in the past. So in 2009, we had the creation of PrimaVision and EVA system, which is a box-style incubator. In 2011, we had the creation of Embryoscope. 2015, we had the Jerry and Miri time-lapse system. And as today, we continue with the development of new systems and new incubators for applications using the time-lapse. I was very fortunate that I had been part of the EVA creation, as well as I worked with Jerry, as well as the Mirror time-lapse, and as well as Embryoscope. So I had the perspective of all time-lapse that I'm going to describe here today. So just a brief history here on the type of optics. The type of optics is important to understand when you're selecting your your incubator system. So you have the bright field and as well as the dark field, or the combination between bright field and dark field. Another point that is worth mentioning is the integration of your incubator and the size compared to the space that you currently have in your lab. So there's various incubator systems in the market, and we always want to look at the variables that fits your needs. One of the things that it's important to realize is the focal planes and how many pictures the Embryoscope or an other time-lapse system will be taking from your embryos. So if you're going to be giving you 5 images in segments, or 7 or 10. So the more you have, the more you can see, for example, when you're doing a pronuclear or European testing. Your capacity. So are you a big center that it requires a large number of slots for your incubator? Or are you a small practice that the size of the number of embryos per dish is important? So you want to take a look on that as well. So as described here, we have some PrimaVision, Embryoscope, EVA, Jerry, Miri time-lapse, and also the Embryoscope. And then you can see how many patients and culture that is described on this last line, as well as the most important that we are talking about now is your artificial intelligence. How can you use that data to help you assess your outcomes in your clinic or future? So we might say that the time-lapse system might be a bridge for your artificial intelligence. So just describing all the type of incubators that I was just listening it to you. So now let's talk about a bit of the uniqueness features that the time-lapse system has for you. So you can remote into the time-lapse software. So I can see the embryos and how they're being fertilized or how they're growing from my home. During not say during the pandemic, because we're still like in the end of the pandemic, embryologists were able to do great assessment from home. That's something that otherwise we can do before. So some of that, or if a person is, you only have one FIRT check to be completed, and you don't have to go into the lab, but you can just visualize the FIRT check online, or you can just, because that information is going to be saved, you'll be able to visualize that information the next day. You may have some annotation possibilities where the KID score system, specifically with the Embryoscope, provides you guided annotation, which can help training future embryologists. And the scoring system is really a great feature that is to the point. You can do your ABC grading system with your trifactor derm and ICM, which is pretty precise from my experience. And the best for those data researchers and folks that would like to continue doing your retrospective data or doing research with the data that is provided from the EmbryoScope, you can export that data into a CSV and create more future research. So the record of the EmbryoScope, for example, the quality of the image is very, very well because the camera that is provided in the EmbryoScope has a very good quality where you can see in high resolution. And that happens through an entire culture period. And also other features of the software that they keep enhancing over time since we obtained the EmbryoScope in our clinic. You also have a higher storage capacity because it's a small box compared to your large boxes from your other incubators, which can decrease the footprint from places, clinics that might not have some space in your laboratory. So let's talk about now the work improvement, how that had changed the way that we assess and grade embryos in our clinic. So for example, the timing of your FIR check, day 3 observation, or your blast observation has really enhanced because it gives the flexibility for you to give those grades at any time during the day. So you're not precise that I have to do my PN check between your specific hours post-injection. You can delay your FIR check. You can do your day 3 observations when you have time in the afternoon. So that really has saved us, create us ability to be doing other tasks that's important in the lab. So for example, here is just the table that we had set, which is a standard culture versus a time-lapse, and how long can you save between your standard culture and also your time-lapse system. That is for day 1. You have your 10 minutes saving. From your day 3, day 5 observation for your assisted hatching. So if you sum all of that time that you have saved, it can really make a difference between an embryologist time versus the time that you have saved with the time-lapse. So here's your typical day and the time that you have saved with time-lapse. So you're looking at 9 minutes, but the hours of the embryologist time saved with all the procedures that is done in laboratory, with a total of 6 hours, which if you take your 8 hours day plus your lunch time and your breaks from an embryology perspective, at least in the US for the work hours, you can really, it's almost a full 1 FT of time saving, 6.2 hours, which it gives you about 15% improvement efficiency. Not to say that the liability now that you're handling less gametes can really give you an opportunity to decrease your liability. So a summary of this presentation is you need less staffing needs. As we all know, we're facing a difficult time now with the workforce in laboratories. And also is not that we're not giving the time for an embryologist, but the embryologist might be doing other tasks within the lab that might be important, more important than just observing the embryos with the older method compared to the time-lapse system. Now, how can you communicate all of this good stuff back to your clinic? So that also has created some within the lab, between the lab and the physician, and then between the physician to the patient, because now within the lab, you can give a second opinion. And a lot of times we all have done this as an embryologist. We're like, oh, I have a question. Is this A or B or a B and a C between your grading because you're right on the fence. So instead of taking the dish out and bringing an embryologist, you can just go to the image and revert the image and seeing how the embryo is being formed, and also the morphology, and how that can really, would this embryo be good for a transfer or a biopsy? You can educate. We at UCSF, we have fellowship and the residency programs. So we do have a lot of personnel or the students rotating through the lab to learn more about what we do in the lab. So we do a lot of education with those images. So now, when we want to try to convene or give a message to a doctor about a patient or about a case, and we want to write, what does this embryo look like? Well, now we can send an image directly from our URMR to the doctor with the image in a more efficient way, because we can give a video of how this embryo is being formed, and we can make a decision. And the physician to the patient now is not like the black box that we all patients, it's like, what is my embryo? How does it look? What are you talking about? Images speak thousands of words. And this is how we can connect the patient to the physician to the patient to provide that information. So a summary here is just to say that communication has been enhanced within the lab to the doctors, as well as the physicians to the patients. So you give more free time. And a comment on the risk reduction, here's your reliability. So you will have less movement of dishes because you don't have to do your dish prep, embryo change between dishes. Once you put the embryos into the incubator, it stays there until the day 5, or when you're doing the grading on day 3 for your hatching. You have labels generated directly from the EmbryoScope system, where it creates the name of the patient. It gives you the SART number, which is the specific patient ID, and also a barcode where now there's less confusion, less mistake, because it's not handmade, that comment on the dish or the name on the dish. Another thing that the Time-Lapse EmbryoScope system has is the color system, which allows you to put fates into your embryos. If you're going to freeze, it's the blue color. If you're going to transfer, it's your green color. And then if it's going to be an embryo that's not viable, we select as red. So as a summary here, you're going to have less exposure, few movements of those gametes between those embryos between hands, a better labeling system, and continuous access to your incubator conditions. And also you have a lot of visual cues on what's happening with your embryos. So the history of the time-lapse system and the software as an evolution, it has been enhanced. It has been getting much better than when we first had that into our laboratory. Allows a lot of flexibility to create standardizations, and which causes better communication and more time for you. And to summarize, it's less exposure to risk. And here's a picture that I love to post. It was a love-hate relationship between our colleague Andrew, who's unfortunately no longer with us, but he now has been a big fan of EmbryoScope. So I hope you have enjoyed this presentation, and I hope to see you around. Thank you.